Toontrack's Drumtracker is a standalone drum replacer that lets you capture not only the rhythms of your drum and percussion performances to the flexible MIDI format, but also preserves their feel. As most professional drummers and audio engineers would testify, most of what separates a good drum beat from a great one is one elusive element: feel. Drummers who articulate the rhythms with greater attention to the speed and timing of each hit produce the best sounding drum recordings. And Drumtracker is an all-in-one solution to capture and rework even the most complex and spontaneous drum recordings. Sound difficult? Let me show you how easy this can be with Drumtracker from Toontrack Music. To get started using Drumtracker, I'll load a drum sample. Drumtracker thinks of any individual sample or recording that you load as one of potentially many inputs. As you'll see in a moment, this is very useful when converting multi-track drums to MIDI. First, I'll browse for the sample itself. Next, I'll let Drumtracker know what final output I want this sample to be in. Several other MIDI formats, including the GM extended set, simple note numbers, and some of Toontrack's own Easy Drummer and Superior MIDI formats are supported as well. I know that this sample contains a kick drum, a snare, and hi-hats. So next, I'll add 2 additional instruments to this input. To save time later, Drumtracker can map each instrument to a MIDI note or drum of your choice. Now that my drum sample is loaded, let's have a listen. While this plays, notice that you can scroll and zoom to navigate the waveform display by adjusting these sliders. The vertical slider is especially useful to view quieter and more intricate drum sounds. You can also use the T and R keys to zoom in or out. With the main edit tool selected, you can also right-click and drag around a specific portion of the waveform to see it close up. The zoom tool is also useful to get around, and double-clicking its icon will zoom out to show you the entire waveform. Now that we know how to get around, let's use the part tool and have Drumtracker start detecting the sample's beats. The first beat in the sample is a kick drum, so with the green box that corresponds with the kick drum selected, I'll drag around the first beat in the sample. I can use the spacebar to quickly preview the sound. The next sound in the sample is a hi-hat, so I'll select the purple box and then drag around the hit to isolate it for conversion to MIDI. Next comes the snare, so I'll select orange and drag a selection around it. Be sure to adjust the threshold value for every part so that it crosses with the loudest part of the waveform. Adjust the threshold accordingly to detect quieter hits, such as this hi-hat. For greater precision with beat detection, choose an appropriate filter for every instrument. These presets are tuned to detect either a kick drum, a snare, or hi-hats more easily. To detect other drums, such as toms or even cymbals, Drumtracker lets you edit and save your own filter presets as well. A low sensitivity setting will detect quieter beats more easily, and hold prevents beats from being packed too closely together. Here's where things get interesting. With all of the hits highlighted as individual parts, press Render. Drumtracker will now scan the audio within the selected parts, and with the help of the filter settings set below, place MIDI beats along the waveform wherever it detects a hit. The height of the vertical beat indicator indicates its velocity or loudness. Using this information, Drumtracker will be able to calculate the intricacies in the timing and the volume of the original sample, once converted into the universal MIDI format. To add additional hits that weren't detected automatically, choose the Edit tool, hold Control on your keyboard, and click anywhere along the waveform or simply press the Note button. Manually placed MIDI events appear orange. To quickly remove manually placed beats, hold Control and click the vertical MIDI beat indicator, or select a MIDI event and press Delete on your PC or Backspace on the Mac. To exclude a detected MIDI event without deleting it, simply choose the Edit tool, hold Control, and click on it. The MIDI event turns red to indicate that it will not be included in the finished MIDI file. Now that I have all the beats detected in this recording, I'll press Preview and slide the preview balance to the left to hear the MIDI signals generated by Drumtracker. The rhythm and velocity have certainly been preserved from the original sample, but in order to hear this more clearly, I'll have each drum trigger a sample much more like the original recording. you'll notice that the loudness of detected beats is pretty varied. By editing the velocity controls of the hi-hats, for example, I can smooth out the range of velocities by setting upper and lower limits. Now that Drumtracker has made MIDI events that capture the feel of the recorded drums, I can export the MIDI data for use in any popular digital audio workstation or DAW software, such as Logic Pro, Cubase, or Pro Tools. To do this, simply select the instruments you want to export to MIDI and click Convert. From here, it's simple. Just give the file a name and destination and set the tempo. Choose MIDI 0 to export all the instruments to a single track, or MIDI 1 to leave the individual tracks intact. Next, I'll show you how to detect rhythms in drum audio from multiple tracks. You may be surprised to hear that it's even easier than with multiple drums and cymbals on a single track. I have 3 audio files representing the sound of a hi-hat, a kick drum, and a snare, this time all recorded separately. As you can hear, I've already created an input for the hi-hat track, so now I'll create a new input for the other 2. What makes beat detection easier when working with separate tracks is that with the Part tool, I can select the entire waveform and detect all of the hi-hat hits at once, rather than working around the kick and snare. Now I can simply adjust the threshold line and make changes to the hi-hat's input filters if necessary. Notice now that when I press Preview, Drumtracker places MIDI events along the waveform in real time. To detect hits in the snare and kick inputs, simply select the input, wrap the entire waveform using the Part tool, make adjustments to the filter and threshold, render, and finally export it to use in your favorite audio program. Here are some tips and tricks for faster editing. Sometimes you want to subtract individual hits while preserving the tempo and overall feel of the original sample. For example, to remove the double snare hit, I'll simply select the Part tool, hold Alt or Option, and then click and drag around the unwanted hit and press spacebar to preview. There are also plenty of easy-to-use keyboard shortcuts for even greater control. To adjust the velocity of any MIDI event, simply select it using the mouse or by using the left and right arrow keys, then hold Control on the PC or Command on the Mac, and press the up or down keys to adjust how hard the drum will be hit. To make finer adjustments to the timing of your MIDI events, simply hold Control on PC or Command on the Mac and press the left and right arrow keys. You can also click and drag a selection around a group of MIDI events and adjust all their velocity values at once. Notice how the edited MIDI events turn blue. This also indicates that they can only be deleted manually. Never lose another great drum performance due to poor audio quality again. Drumtracker is here, and it's the perfect solution for converting real audio drums and percussion into the widely supported MIDI format. Once converted to MIDI, you'll have complete control over the actual sound of your drums, while preserving the raw feel of the original recording. Perfect for the home musician and professional alike. Recreate even your favorite analog drum recordings in a far more flexible digital environment with Drumtracker from Toontrack Music.